Paul Mackey with One Idjit's Thoughts on Podcast, Day 29 of the Dog Days of Podcasting Challenge. I know I unceremoniously recorded the last Dog Days episode of Gravity Falls, deciding only later to hold the rest of the episodes until after Dog Days. But that won't be so with Rockford Files. I'm declaring this to be the last episode of Rockford Files I will review during Dog Days. Tonight, I'm looking at The Big Ripoff, which originally aired October 25th, 1974. Brief summary. Rockford has been in France working on a case in which a woman, Nancy Fraser, thinks a dead man was killed by his wife, Ginny Nelson. On his return, he is instead convinced that the man is alive, based on the fact Ginny is living off interest from half of the life insurance payoff. When Nancy Fraser dodges paying Rockford for the case, he moves on to the life insurance company, offering to recover proof of the fraud, some $400,000 worth, for a small expenses reimbursement and a finder's fee. He tracks Nancy Fraser to a small artist community, where he then searches for Nancy and Mr. Nelson with aid from an artist's model he picks up while she's hitchhiking. In the end, he finds Mr. Nelson, but comes out with about 8 of Nelson's so-called primitive-style art paintings and nothing else.
This is Jim Rockford. At the tone, leave your name and message. I'll get back to you.
It's Andra. Remember last summer at Pat's? I've got a 12-hour layover before I go to Chicago. How about it?
Who is? Well, there's lots of guest stars in this one, starting with Suzanne Summers in an extended sequence without dialogue in one of her first credited roles. Rockford picked up artist model Maryland, played by Jill Clayburgh, also destined to become a much bigger star later in the decade. I enjoyed seeing Bruce Kirby as gallery owner Carl. He was a hardworking character actor who you'd probably know as that guy. He's also notable as being actor Bruno Kirby's father. This aged poorly. So Rockford went to a tiny town far outside LA and just started dating a model he picked up on the side of the road, presumably never to return to town. Sure, it didn't seem to imply that anything happened between them but a chaste-looking kiss, but still. Totally 70s. The pay toilet. Most pay toilets in America were discontinued in the 1970s. They were seen to be discriminatory, as men's room facilities tended to be mostly free-use urinals with a single pay stall, while ladies' rooms were exclusively pay stalls. Pay toilets were campaigned against in the 1970s, and several states banned them outright. Their numbers were greatly reduced by the end of the 1970s. Artifactoids. I'm not going to gush about the Bell telephone vans, but there were a bunch of them in an early shot in this episode. They found a very French-looking section of backlot for the opening sequence, but used a fairly American product in the grocery bag. Rockford is holding a bag with Mrs. Cubbison's cornbread stuffin', which was introduced to the market in 1955. Sophie Cubbison and her husband ran commercial bakeries for many years, much of which was Melba toast and other crackers, of what might be called health food later on, bran crackers, soy crackers, coffee substitutes, and such. The stuffing line was started with broken pieces of Melba toast and expanded to the cornbread stuffin' seen in this episode. The brand is still active with a wide range of bread-derived products like croutons and stuffing mixes. So what worked? This was another great one, with Rockford working hard through all of the traveling, tailing, dealing with unfriendly local police. He ultimately came up correct about all his theories and with almost nothing to show for it. They did a good job of compressing the beginning of the story, showing Rockford scheming to gain Mrs. Nelson's trust without needing to spell it all out. What didn't work? Well, storytelling efficiency aside, I really would have loved to see Suzanne Summers in more of a role, but I do understand she was really just starting out, and likely was cast for her look. I also found it odd that Jill Clayburgh was top billed among guest stars, and it was yet just a woman that Jim ran into incidentally, having no real bearing on the plot. Also, I wasn't clear on why Rockford was hired in the first place. Unless I'm confused, didn't Nancy Fraser already know Mr. Nelson was alive? Next time, the episode will arrive outside of the Dog Days of Podcasting and will be called Find Me If You Can, which ideally must involve Rockford on the hunt for someone as slick and smart as he is, I hope. Happy hunting! You have been listening to the One Idjit's Thoughts on podcast, produced by Paul Mackey in association with QuadrupleZ.com. Theme music is Too Good by Jack Mangan and is used by permission from him. If you would like to hear other podcasts by me, you might try the Ghostlight Podcast, a completed introcast about the TV series Slings and Arrows, or Idjit Cast, an introcast for the TV series Supernatural. Both can be found on fine podcasting listening software everywhere or at quadruplez.com. This show has some of the grainiest stock footage ever. Did people really suspend their disbelief that much that it's not distracting? Alright, I suppose maybe 20-inch screen at 525 line resolution. Maybe not even in color, but still, geez.